Hello, hello. It's Saturday morning here in Seattle. I'm hoping my so so I'll just see if anyone else is joining here. It's kind of cool this morning in Seattle in the 50s. Um, I'm wondering if I'll risk taking off my headset since my dog is upstairs. Maybe she'll allow it. She's acting a little weird today. Um, I took her to go on a walk, and first I just kind of let her lead us when we go on a walk because I figure she's an Akita and she needs to exert her free will every so often. So since she doesn't really get to choose a lot of things, um, when we go out, I kind of let her decide what our adventure will be. So she started walking this one direction down the block and did all her sniffing and all of this stuff. Um, and then she decided to go the other way. And so we started going the other way. And uh, she just, we got about half a block that way. And she decided to turn back towards our house. And uh, so we came back. She didn't do her business. Um, so I'm gonna have to take her back out after this, and we'll see. I think she's kind of worried. Oh, here she's coming now. I think she's kind of worried about my son. You can kind of see her behind. Yeah, she's she's not having this today. Yeah, she's kind of worried about my son, the one who lives with me, because he started getting sick yesterday. And you know how the animals always know when their humans are not right. So she's kind of maybe staying close to home just in case he needs us, in case he needs some herbs, which I did. I better get on topic here. If I look away, it's just looking at my computer to look at my notes. But yeah, really quick to finish my sidetrack story. Um, yeah, so since my son wasn't feeling well, last night he was saying he was kind of it always starts for him in his throat. Um, so I went out and I picked some fresh thyme, and I think what I have might be lemon thyme, but it doesn't matter. It could be any time. So I picked some thyme and some sage leaves, just garden sage. Um, and then I chopped up some fresh ginger and I just poured boiling water over that, like made a tea for him last night. And then this morning, after my dog took us on the walk to nowhere, I came back and then I saw um, that our thermometer was like sitting out. So I'm like, okay, something's up. Um, so he was running just kind of a low fever, and he said he was just feeling loopy, um, and and yeah, just so kind of congested. So he had already taken some Dayquil, um, which for the lower fever, I was taught to let that go. Maybe for adults until it's about 102 or so, because your body is actually uh, trying to kill off some of those virus. So it's activating some proteins and the immune system to do that. So, but anyway, he was feeling like achy and oh, headache, that was the other thing. So, so maybe the acetaminophen and the Dayquil, uh, would help some with that, um, but yeah, then I picked some feverfew, which can help with kind of that malaise and also in the name, fever, and headache. So I picked some of that and also I picked some more thyme and lemon balm, just because that kind of helps calm the nervous system as well. And made some more tea for him to sip. Um, so that's what's going on in my world. Uh, Knock on wood, I haven't I haven't gotten sick myself since, for more than a year, and that is when last like, very early oh, no, I take that back. I did get that norovirus, right after Christmas, um, which I got from my son. So, he's out in the world a lot more than I am, so if I get sick, it's something super, like, contagious from him, but generally, I'm a very healthy type person, especially since I've been studying herbalism. So, yeah, so I did want to give just a little introduction in case, you're new to herbalism, and, so I'm gonna start with a quote from my teacher, Matthew Wood, and it is from his this book, The Book of Herbal Wisdom. He's written, I don't know, maybe 15 books or something. So the quote is, "What I have found is that a deeper understanding of the herbs brings us into a weirdly magical world which goes beyond the modern scientific foundation." So um, I want you to keep that in mind that um, aside from the actions that the plants have, um, they they are quite old beings, trees and plants. And so there's a lot that we don't understand because maybe, we haven't measured or examined every little thing. So that's kind of where that weirdly magical world is, I think, which totally drew me in. And you may know my background is from Western science, and I did my undergraduate degree in biochemistry, uh, and then I went on to be a leader in an organization. So I did a master's in not in science, but in organizational leadership. However, I was working in science for my entire almost 30-year career, starting out with bench science, where I was doing mostly immunology and molecular biology. And then I moved into clinical research where we were testing different, I guess, yeah, I'll just lump them into the category of drugs, medicines, on people. And and so when I got sober and started figuring myself out, who I was, because, a lot of the drinking had been to numb, this feeling of not being able to be myself, and something just not being in alignment. So, the more I really, paid attention to, what I was feeling, where my heart was leading me, uh, and and I found herbalism. Um, I at first, when I was going to study it, I I thought that I was just going to approach it as I did my other academic, um, endeavors, and, that it would just be, learning, like, which plant, quote, "does what," or, all the different, biochemistry, or in plants, it's called phytochemistry, but learning, just like I did with biochemistry in humans. And so, I was surprised when I started joining some of the free classes that the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism was offering. And yes, there it was a lot of that, but there was also this other component that that really drew me in. And so, yeah, so uh, I'm looking at a document that I'm going to give you the link. It'll be kind of a live document on my Google Drive, and I put an introduction, and then I started a section just for the herbs that I will be talking about today, and then um, maybe any additional ones in the future. And I also have a section for resources. So there are quite a few Substacks that I follow with run by herbalists who have many more years of experience than I do. So I put all of those in there, and also some podcasts in there, and and some places where if you wanted to um, shop for some of the herbs, you can buy the dried herbs and make your own medicines and things. And I will be adding some books in there. One that is really instructive for once you start. Um, sorry, I have all my Matthew Wood books here. But once you start wanting to make your own, I recommend this one, A Modern Herbal Dispensatory, and that's by Thomas Easley and Stephen Horn. And they have really good instructions and pictures and everything. And it really is as easy as, or even easier than cooking, I would say. And you can make it as sciencey or as folksy as you like. And I kind of do both. I bounce back and forth because of my bench science career and my school training. I kind of love all that stuff. So I actually have a set of graduated cylinders, which are super sciencey and fun, and pipettes and everything, because I do make custom blends for people. Um, and yeah, well, I'll get into kind of why that is, why you would need a custom blend, maybe as I talk through. But I will yeah, I'll jump into my introduction. And so the earliest medicines were plants, of course. Um, and many cultures have these long-standing traditions of supporting, the health of their peoples and general well-being with materials made from plants, whether it is taking, the bark. A lot of the Native Americans would watch the animals and see which parts of the plants or trees they were using when something was wrong with them. And so uh, as you can imagine, bears would strip the bark. So there might be bark, or there might be digging up of roots. There might be just chewing on the leaves, if you think of deer, maybe. Um, and yeah, so where I live in the US, we we've had this kind of interruption of traditions. Clearly, the first one being before this was the US, and it was indigenous peoples and their wise practices handed down, and their medicines, and the coevolution with plants and including trees, and really cohabiting this earth. And of course, with colonization, that was interrupted, um, and and then again, some of it has come back in different ways. And like I said, I've been learning from the traditions at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, um, and some of the other herbalists as well. Like there are a few in the Northwest who I love. I should put them on here too. who I've been learning from and I take classes from as well. But I'm doing my program through the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. So, okay, so back to kind of the history, maybe a little just introduction of the US. It integrates traditions primarily from Western Europe. So, again, the people who colonized and then immigrated here from those mostly Western European countries. And then, of course, we have the Native American traditions that many were shared with the colonists. And then, um, thankfully, some were continued despite the genocide and separating the Native American people from their lands. And then we also have the African and the African American traditions that came in with the practices of slavery. Um, and we also have what kind of is just called Southern folk medicine, which is I don't know too much about the all of the details of the origins, but it does kind of have its own language and rhythms. And there is a teacher in my program in my institute where I took a lot of this information from today, actually. Her name is Phyllis D. Light, and she's an expert in Southern folk medicine. And she has a book on Southern folk medicine as well, and it's a very rich practice too. Okay, so there was this period of time, and this part I won't go too much into the history, um, because it's kind of long, and honestly, I don't remember all the dates and everything, but there was a period in the US when herbalists were actually, like, jailed, and then they had to kind of practice underground, and, um, there really was a campaign against, people kind of knowing how to use plants themselves and work with these remedies. And so it kind of went to the fringe and went underground. Like, hey, much like astrology, right? Um, so yeah, so anyway, that's why we have um, this kind of patchwork um, herbalism that's coming back together in the US. And so um, but as we're experiencing this modern medical and healthcare system, it's failing to actually make people well. Um, and you see just so many people who can't seem to find a way to wellness. And so they end up just kind of settling for a lower and lower bar of what it feels like to be in their body and to be around. And it also, I think, the system just doesn't educate people on how to prevent avoidable illnesses. So again, it's not that there's no place for Western medicine and hospitals because clearly there are a lot of advances that have been made and that um, interventions that can be best provided by that system when you think of surgeries or different chemotherapy and radiotherapy regimens for cancer. However, I think those many of those can fall into um, maybe preventable disorders or um, situations. So, um, so there is a place for everything, and it's not. I don't have um, like a bias or um, a religious reason not to not to use the system that we have when it's needed. However, I really do see that it's important for people to have knowledge to support their own wellness and that of their loved ones. Um, and so you'll see that if you start maybe looking into some of the other herbalism sources, it will vary by like region and lineage. We similar to astrology again, there tend to be these lineages where it's passed on from an elder to the next generation and then to the next. Um, and it's it really the name of the game is empiricism, and it's really seeing the evidence that something works in the people we're helping. And that is in contrast to when I worked in the Western modern medicine medical system. It was based on really these statistical probabilities that were based on flawed or in many cases these heavily biased data sets. So it really was taking apart the human and reducing it to these different pieces of data, and then those would get separated again and mixed up into a data set. Um, and so there are these layers and layers of separation from the actual human. And of course, every time you're separating from the whole, you're introducing the opportunity for some kind of flaw in your process. Um, so herbalism is this type of holistic care in that we do not address certain diagnoses for the most part, but we're attempting to see patterns of discord and disharmony in the person, which are causing that strife. And not, you can, we often just start by looking at the person's demeanor. And there's, there's generally, you can see there's this underlying maybe sadness or discomfort. Um, and so, starting from there and then kind of seeing what the patterns are. And on the kind of more sciencey side, of course, we can look at labs once we're kind of in that clinical side of herbalism. Um, and we also often use skin and the tongue, the pulse. All of these things give us a lot of information. Um, okay, so once that kind of primary pattern is identified, and we also look at the person's constitution as well. Like, do they tend to be, dry or damp, hot or cold? Do they tend to be super mentally active versus super physically active? And if you know astrology, you can kind of see the overlap with astrology. Many of these ancient systems are linked together because it is part of nature and the universe, all of it. So once we kind of figure out what the primary pattern is, and then identify some likely herb candidates to work with, then the thing to know is that the herbal medicines, they are helping the body to restore itself to this proper working order for whatever the situation is, um, and to reach a harmony, versus a pharmaceutical medicine, which is targeting a specific pathway to prevent or to provoke a change, without necessarily being able to control the off target actions or being able to adapt as the person is changing and healing. Where the herb is able to do that is able to respond as the person's condition is changing. Because if you think about plants out there, they are responding all the time. They have to the conditions that they're in, the weather, the environment of the condition of the soil, invaders that are trying to eat them or damage them. Um, so so you can see where in comparison, the pharmaceutical meds are kind of dumb, like, they're just kind of missiles, and so you can see that that's why there are because you cannot really control that collateral, damage or impact, that's where we get the side effects that are happening, from the pharma meds, and, because they're kind of in there, monkeying around versus the herb is getting your body to use its own wisdom to change things. So yeah, so and then you often also see, somebody has a side effect and then they're given another drug to deal with that, and that's why you see people who have, they're taking like, 10 different prescriptions, um, at a time. So yeah, so aside from the physical benefits of working with plants as medicines, they help us heal our fractured relationship with Earth, and with one another. Um, humans and plants co-evolved. At one point, we all came from the sea, and plants still evolve with us and respond to the conditions that humans are in as well, in order to help us heal. But maybe we've lost some reciprocity as we've distanced ourselves, um, from the plants that are growing around us. Uh, Certainly, I've I've become more aware of, which plants are showing up, in my space, and it's not, before I went into herbalism, I just thought like, oh, every year they're going to be those dandelions, and I'm going to have to pull them out, and maybe there are some other weeds, and I just rip them out. And toss them in the compost. But now I'm seeing that there are specific plants that come in, and they come in to support me or my family, for that coming season or a reason. Um, but that's a whole other thing I could go into. But even that noticing, that is bringing me closer to nature, whereas when I was in full on, um, capitalist hierarchy, productivity mode, I was really blinded to a lot of that noticing, because it wasn't a priority. My priority was to achieve these ways that success are defined, in our culture. And so I just didn't, I kind of blocked it. Um, And being in that, um, capitalistic environment that sets us up for scarcity and competition, it we get disconnected from one another as well. And so, I find that, these herbal remedies help to reconnect us to one another as well because they're often shared, through these, largely verbal traditions with stories, about case studies, um, and as you start like experimenting on your own and finding how helpful they are, then you start sharing with your friends and family and your neighbors, um, and that yeah, and especially I find, like, the magical uses as well that are kind of like, well, I don't know why it works, um, but many, many people have the same story about something like cleavers, which is, for by most definitions, a weed. It's very, it clings to everything. Like, you walk through a patch and it'll be, sticking all over you. Um, but one of its magical uses is that it will disentangle you from a relationship when you break up. And I've heard that from so many people, and it seemed to help. I tried it with my daughter, and when she went through a breakup, and it seemed to help with that. So yeah, don't discount that. plants are, they're very resilient and they have a lot of wisdom that because, our cells are very similar to plant cells, they can get in there and work on many levels with us. Okay, so we're like at the halfway point, so I'm gonna switch over to the actual herbs to help with anxiety and sleep. So, um, of course, I'll have to start with this isn't medical advice. Always consult your health and wellness team for anything, but take what resonates and leave the rest. That includes my spiel about about why I am into herbalism and want to help empower other people with this knowledge as well. Take what resonates from that first part and leave the rest. Um, so yeah, so with anxiety and sleep, of course, it's best to strive for an easeful manner of living, but life often throws us challenges, and that's not always possible. So that's why I thought I would just, um, provide some information on some herbs that can support. And you'll find that certain, herbs or certain combinations just work, better than others for you. And a lot of that has to do, again, with that overall pattern, of what's going on with you and with your constitution as well. Um, and, I also suspect that, the plants know if you're not doing your part to help. Again, what they want to do is help your body um, get to this place of harmony. So, um, if you keep like running yourself ragged, and you're not doing things that might be supportive, like perhaps starting a mindfulness or meditation practice, or like limiting your screen time, like limiting the exposure to um, some of that uh, some of that culture that drives the scarcity feeling and the need to always produce and be a certain way. Um, if you're not kind of limiting that your own exposure that's within your control, no one's forcing you to scroll Instagram, or no one's forcing you to stay on your phone until the very last minute before you go to bed. So I think the plants they kind of know, and they may just like stop helping after a while, just as a reminder, like, hey, remember, like you're part of this equation as well. So, yeah, so that's my little lecture on like, the why you might be like, hey, why isn't this working anymore? It's for your own good. Um, or you might if you really have been trying, with all those things, you might just need to try swap out, some of the herbs for a different one. Um, and also, that brings me to another thing. People are often asking, like, "Oh, can I take it because I'm on XYZ, or is it safe?" Um, I would say to that, we're eating these plants all the time. We eat plants. We use them as tea, like, there are entire, sections of the grocery store that have all of these as tea, um, or most of them that I'm listing, and plants, for the most part, they don't, they're not like a scalpel coming in and, like, changing thing. Like I said, they're getting your body to do something. So, um of course, check with your doctor, but I would kind of use that guideline of like, well, would you check with your doctor if you're gonna buy some new tea? Um, and yeah, if the answer is yes, then yes, check. But just be prepared because most of the Western trained doctors, unless they're trained in traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, they'll be like, no. They'll just be like, "No, you're just making expensive tea," or, whatever they say. Things that I used to say. Um, so anyway, I will start with Melissa, which is also called lemon balm, and that's Melissa officinalis. And again, I have all this on the document, and that is like one of the few mints that is both cooling and has like a sour taste. So all of them tend to be aromatic, and a lot of the herbs that we use in cooking are in the mint family. So this is another one, and it's good for nervousness, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, palpitations, insomnia. It can be sedating, but I haven't really. Um, well, actually, yes, I gave I gave some to mixed with the next one I'll talk about to my aunt, and she did fall asleep pretty quickly. Oops, my internet is unstable. Hopefully, it'll be okay. Um, Okay, so then we have Tulsi, which is also known as holy basil. Um, and this is Ocimum sanctum is the scientific name, or botanical name. And there are many varieties of this one. I saw like three for sale on Mountain Rose Herbs, where I typically buy the dried herbs that I need right away, and I don't have, ones that I've grown in this amount that I need, or they're not ready, they're not dried yet. But so there are many, and the one that I'm currently using is called Rama Holy Basil. And this uh, quiets noise in the mind. It's for people who have a tendency to wake up in the middle of the night. Um, but I tend to drink Tulsi tea just kind of throughout the day. It just again, it kind of levels out that kind of noise that can be going through your mind. So, hi, Dorina. Yay. Um, and then the next one is one that people are probably well familiar with, and that's chamomile. And there are a couple of different scientific names and strains that we see: Metricaria chamomilla, Chamomilla recutita. And my teacher, Matthew Wood, he is famous for saying that chamomile is for babies of any age. So just kind of people who are like whiny and they want attention, but then he always says like, oh, like if you're sitting at Thanksgiving and then you're passing around the food and like your Aunt Sally is like, "Oh, well, I was waiting for you to pass the potatoes, for 5 minutes, and I don't want them now." Like, that type of person. Um, However, it's also settling to the stomach. It's mildly, sedating, so that's why it's often put into bedtime teas and things like that. Lately, I've been infusing chamomile into some of my salves because I find that it's really soothing for skin as well. And it can go in that way and maybe calm for sleep, which I've been using at bedtime as well through my skin. And then another is passion flower, which if if you have never seen one, Google it because they're really striking looking and really beautiful flowers. I don't I don't know if you can really grow them in a lot of the northern climates. I think they're more of a southern flower, but the scientific name is Passiflora incarnata. It calms the nervous system, helps with tension and spasms and with restlessness. And it's really for the insomnia that the root cause is this overstimulation of the mind, excessive thinking. And it's a specific for this inability to stop the mental chatter that's keeping you awake versus, say, like some aches or pains that might be keeping you awake. And again, with a lot of these herbs, you can you'll see them in teas often in the store or at a health food specific store. But you can also order your own dried herbs and then make your own tea blends um, as well. Um, and that way also you can kind of adjust, like play with the dose that you like as well, because a lot of the tea bags are really just a tiny, such a tiny amount. They may not have that therapeutic benefit that you're looking for to calm down the anxiety, or to give you a little more sedation or nervous system regulation at nighttime. And again, I'll put the sources where I shop on this Google Doc as well. And then we have blue vervain, which is Verbena officinalis. And this is a very ancient plant, and it was most one of the most important plants of the Druids. So if you do any Googling, you might see that it was one of the seven uh, herbs of Ireland that had the power over the natural and the supernatural. So this is one that certainly veers into the magical properties as well. It was also heavily used by the Greeks and the ancient Greeks and Romans. And I have a lot of this growing now. It's not flowering yet, but I made fresh tincture with it last year, and it's been so helpful for a lot of things. So I used it for headache. I I used to get migraines all the time, but and I used to get a weird one called an atypical migraine, which just didn't have a prodrome. But if I do get one now, I can sense it coming because I'll start getting that kind of pixelated vision, and I would take blue vervain and plus a couple other herbs as well, and it would just nip it in the bud. But it's also for um, again, my teacher, Matthew Wood, he tends to say it's for people who are just holding themselves to really high standards, for this kind of maybe nervous energy, but also people who tend to say, "Oh, well, I should be doing workouts, 7 days a week instead of 5 days a week," or that type of energy that's kind of moving through you. It's also helpful for a lot of postmenopausal symptoms as well. So I've used it in a lot of blends that I make for my friends who are in that age group as well. Um, and the next one is skullcap, and that is Scutellaria lateriflora. And this is also one of my favorites. When I first started learning about herbs, I was kind of scared of it because the name sounds scary, skullcap. But it's really kind of a lot of the names will tell you what they've been traditionally used for, and it's skull, which is kind of thinking too intensely. And so it calms the nervous system. It can be for those kind of chronic stress situations where you could take it during the day for stress in the same way that I drink like the Tulsi or holy basil tea. Sometimes I'll throw in skullcap too in there. And it's also for feeling things too intensely, like stimuli. Um, so if you're finding that like, "Oh, I've got a big party, and lately when I go to those things or a show or something, it's just too much," it can kinda help, tame those oversensitive maybe feelings a little bit. And it's really good for restless leg syndrome and for just kind of where your muscles won't completely relax at night, so that type of insomnia. And then we have mullein, which is Verbascum thapsus. And mullein is I love it so much. I use it for a lot of things. And it's a really when it's dried, it's so fluffy and soft. It's like a little lammy or something. Um, and you've probably seen it. I think it grows as a weed in a lot of places. It can get quite large and has these giant fuzzy leaves. So that is kind of like a signature, that kind of fuzzy leaf for calming, because those a lot of times those things that feel nice, they are like calming herbs once they're working in with our bodies. So it is good also for nervousness, for insomnia. Um, Matthew Wood says it's for intellectuals and hot air people. So people who just think too much and intellectualize your feelings, and I'm I'm calling myself out there. I've been known to do that, which maybe that's why I like, Mullein a lot, and it's just as a side note, it's super good for any lung, issues, so where you've got a dry cough, Mullein is a go-to. I also find it's good for pain, which it makes it another good nighttime herb. Uh, yeah, and then we have black cohosh, which is the scientific name Simicifuga racemosa. And this is a really good specific for the neck, like the trapezius stiffness and just pain and soreness. I had that really badly, just that's where I hold my tension. So I would just take a course of black cohosh for like a couple of weeks. I make a tincture of it. So I would just take a few drops in the morning and at night. And it would tend to help me as long as I was doing my part as well by like trying to stretch and, move around to get that fascia mobilized as well. But it helps with that because I was finding that it was keeping me awake, just feeling that discomfort or every time I would change positions. It also is known to help with kind of this brooding mind. Um, it's used a lot for PMS, where there's just this like really kind of gloom and doom kind of feeling like going over things again. But of course, that happens to us at any time, not just if we are in a PMS situation. So it can help with that. It's a very, very good nervine that's been used for a long time. And I think it's in the ranunculus family. Okay, so then the next one I have down is cleavers, which is Gallium aparine. And cleavers is another one that I just love it. It has so many uses, including cancer, which I actually am using that plus another one called red clover for my mom's cancer recurrence because they can't. She's 86 and it's in a place where they can't do anything. They can't even biopsy it. So it's like a watch and wait situation. So I'm like, well, okay, this isn't going to hurt, and maybe it'll help keep it contained. But aside from those uses, cleavers is also for just kind of um, people who their skin like itches and kind of tickles easily. So it's a sensitive nervous system. Um, Also could be when they've got this sympathetic excess, and so, we're either in that sympathetic or parasympathetic mode, but if we're not able to get into the parasympathetic, we can't really digest food very well. We can't calm down to go to sleep. So it's helpful for those situations, and also just feeling like I'm not myself. I'm kind of like fussy or irritated or clingy. Um, Also a good one for children as well. A lot of these are really effective with children, and like chamomile has been used for children and for pets too. If they will drink it, like obviously not hot tea, but once you cool it down, you can use it that way. And yeah, and cleavers. Uh, People have told me that dogs will just go and start eating it themselves, like, they know, they're wise, if they need to, like, calm down or if they have something going on, because it's also has an affinity for the lymph, and so it'll help, clear your lymph system if there's something going on. And then the last one I have on the list is wild lettuce. It's also sometimes called prickly lettuce, and, the scientific name is Lactuca virosa. Sometimes, people mistake it for dandelion because it does have the same kind of bright yellow flowers, but they're smaller, and there are kind of 2 ways that this plant grows. One, it has giant leaves that are serrated, like giant, and a lot of them. The other is it has more delicate stems and leaves, um, but this is a super powerful weed, that it showed up in my yard, this year, and I didn't really notice it before. So, again, when they show up and they, like, walk up to your door, there's you probably are gonna find that you need them. Um, and this one can help with negative thinking. It can help with muscle and mind tension. Um, the higher doses can be pretty sedating, but it's also good for pain as well. So yeah, I was mostly using it when I found that I needed more of a sedative because, for whatever reason, sometimes the full moon just makes me really wakeful. So I will use wild lettuce then. It's also a very effective acne treatment for teens. It's used really successfully there, and it's a lot less. Um, it's not invasive like the other systemic treatments that are often given for acne. So it's worth a try if you ever have any friends or family who are suffering from that. Does anyone online? I know I just have a couple people, but if either of you have questions, just so you know, I started with my kind of spiel about herbalism and what I think it is and why I feel that it's part of my mission to empower other people um, by kind of spreading the word about it. And I think you'll find that um, that's very common with most herbalists. We kind of stay outside of the mainstream system because there's a lot of history of persecution in this country, but also because we want people to know that it's not a big deal to just be treating yourself and your family for minor things, and it feels super empowering to have your own medicine cabinet and to be able to support yourself without the kind of nuclear option of a lot of the traditional for since 1940s or whatever, so not very long, but the meds that are doled out very regularly by our Western medical system. It's again, like I said, in a lot of situations, if you're looking at like a sentence to be on, high blood pressure medication or you're like borderline diabetes, diabetes really didn't exist until we started living this way and eating this way. So there a lot of these things there are ways. Again, the herbs will expect us to do our part and change what we can, behaviorally and in our environment. Um, but there's so many that are free or they're really cheap, and so it's in my opinion, having been in the Western science world for almost 30 years as my career, and also raising my kids that way. Um, And versus now, I still have one kid at home. He's not a kid, he's 23, and he's soon to be sworn in as a police officer this coming week. So, so anyway, but I still have him, and he's, like, been willing to be on this journey with me, and, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm treating him with some herbs right now because he was coming down with something, and he still has 3 more days 2 days of police academy and then the graduation. But yeah, and again, a lot of these herbs are we use them all the time in food as well. Some that we might overlook, that we often have like in our fridge, or worst case, you could use your dried out, like desiccated 5-year-old thyme, dried thyme or dried rosemary. But those two are really useful, thyme and rosemary. Rosemary tends to grow well even in containers, in little pots. Thyme spreads like crazy, but those are really good, like, especially if you start feeling a sore throat, just making a thyme tea. It has a lot of antimicrobial properties or a steam, like just kind of steaming it, like pouring boiling water, put a towel over your head, let that come up. And then rosemary, that's one of my favorites, like in food. But I make like I dry it, and then chop it up and mix it with salt and make like a rosemary salt, like that. So there are a lot of ways short of going all sciency, and making an actual, tincture where you can start experimenting with herbs just that you use culinarily anyway. Parsley is one that I just learned that if you feel like you're getting a UTI, like right at that first feeling, then make a parsley tea and just like drink that, keep drinking that throughout the day, like make a whole bunch of it. Like just, chop it up. With any of these, what if you make your own tea out of the fresh herbs, chop it up, fairly. It doesn't have to be tiny because you're gonna strain it, but, fairly small because you wanna get as much surface area to expose, for the water to suck out the medicinal properties, into your cup, and so you don't even need, like, a tea strainer, but just any mesh strainer. I also make it just kind of becomes a lifestyle, and I make routinely burdock root infused water, and marshmallow root infused water because, well, I tend to be really dry, and both my son and I are really active people, and so um, marshmallow root just helps like keep your fascia hydrated, especially as we're going into summer. Sometimes you'll feel soreness, but it might not be your muscles, it might be just the fascia. So it keeps that and it helps with the just everything, the intracellular matrix. Marshmallow root is really mucilaginous. And so it's similar to a lot of other seaweeds actually that I've learned about. So it helps inside the cells because we all came from that environment. Um, so yeah, I just make like every couple days I make like a big ball jar of that infusion and also the burdock root. Marshmallow root is a cold water infusion. Burdock root is boiling water. And the burdock root, actually a commonly used for food in a lot of Asian cuisines. You'll see burdock root just in stir fries and things like that. But when it's dried, then it and you pour the boiling water over time, it makes this beautiful like bright green color, really kind of unusual green, not like a deep herby green, but more of like a really vibrant light green. And burdock helps with liver. It helps us process all the toxins that we are unfortunately, consuming in foods, and just through the air and things like that. So it helps with our the proper like balance of fluids in terms of oils. Like it helps us metabolize the oils, so that we can use them to hydrate, in especially in our cells because there's this lipid layer in the membrane. So it helps with hydration, but not with the water, more with the oil side of things. So those are kind of two that I use. And then lately, I've also been making some nettle leaf infused water. Again, infusions are basically like teas, um, and that's because nettle leaf really helps with allergies. And there's so much pollen around right now. So that's another one. And then because of my age, I'm 54, I have some of those postmenopausal symptoms. I use sage. So I'll just make a big like container of sage tea just from the sage in my garden. I just chop that up, and I'll drink that and I tend to, like, mix them like a crazy scientist. I'll just kinda mix them all, and drink those in the morning. Uh, and yeah, I think that is about it for today, for the herbs on stress and anxiety, and, kinda even though the last few that I was talking about weren't specifically for stress and anxiety, it to me, it falls into that, like, keeping yourself in this state of well-being, in your sweet spot where your body's not stressed, your mind isn't stressed, and of course, they're related. As we know, if we can get our body to relax, our mind will relax, and if we get our mind to relax, our body can relax our muscles, as well. So I thank you. I will you'll the recording will be out so you can watch the first part, and I will send out the link, via email to the Google Doc, and it'll be kind of a work, in progress that I'll keep updating, as I add these and, probably do 1 herb to every 2 astrology or something like that. We'll see. It's all a big experiment. All right. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the weekend.